Back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. We're hanging out here inside of the Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios. That guy is Mike Sofka. This guy is Dan Tortora. Mike Sofka is from Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. You know that this bird is from wakeupcalldt.com. And what is it? Birds of a feather flock together. And when it comes to fantasy, we know what we're doing over here. The NFC is what we're talking about today. It's wide receiver advice, baby. We did every backfield of all 32 teams in the NFL, every quarterback situation in the NFL as well with all 32 franchises. Last week's video was the AFC, and we went to every wide receiver situation in the AFC. That was 16 teams, and today we got 16 franchises to go through for the NFC to tell you who's catching those passes or trying to catch those passes inside of the NFC. We'll have the East, the West, the North, and the South, and Mike and I are going to be bringing you advice on every single one of those fantasy situations and implications and so much more. So, just so you know, not just today, but always, you have to watch these videos because Mike and I are giving you a library well in advance of your fantasy draft of every single position. We will be talking about tight ends. We'll talk about the kickers and the defenses and the special teams. We'll have all of it for you. We'll have the rookie thoughts about it. We'll have the adjusted explosive index. We'll talk about that with Mike. So we will get you ready in every way possible. And what it's going to do is when you watch live like you are right now and you listen live, you're getting the information, you're writing it down. When this stuff gets archived, you can literally go to multiple locations and pull these up. And in your draft, you could go to it and say, what did Mike and Dan say about such and such? And you can find it. So we're giving you it now, but we're also building a library of fantasy information that you can pull the book out and go right to it and get what you need. Position by position, rookie conversation, all the good stuff. We are helping you to get your fantasy mind right so that you draft correctly and draft accordingly. The ticker on the bottom is giving you all the information that you need. Dan Tortora Broadcast Media is so much more than sports. You're seeing that on the bottom here. You're also seeing how you can connect with us. So with all of that being said, Mr. Mike Sofka, it's NFC wide receiver time. How are we doing this morning?
Awesome. Excited. Ready to go. You?
I'm doing very well. You know, it's a beautiful thing to be able to talk about fantasy for a living. So, you know, you and I could be doing other things. You know, we could be doing things that we don't like, but I love this. So life is good when you get to sit here and talk about fantasy with a good friend and a trusted fantasy expert, in my opinion. So I want to start in the East. I want to start with the Cowboys, and I want to get your thoughts on Amari Cooper and what Dallas did last year, how that's going to carry over into this year.
You know, it's amazing what a change of scenery can do for some people sometimes, you know, and you hear this, you know, with everything from runaway children to, you know, changing jobs in your personal life, you know, and Amari Cooper didn't seem to be thriving in Oakland. And I was questioning his talent at one point, and then he comes over to Dallas and all of a sudden, he's catching passes. He's not dropping them. I think he had like 6 drop passes with the Cowboys, which is not a lot considering the targets he's going to receive coming up here and the targets they were giving him. Dallas was desperately in need of a number 1 receiver. And, you know, John Gruden looked like a genius after, you know, after the moves that he made. It doesn't look like they're going to fall off now that they got Antonio Brown. And now you look at Amari Cooper. He's battling himself for a big contract. He's trying to write that big check with a lot of zeros, and the only way to do that is prove he's a real number 1. I don't think anybody's going to take away targets from Amari Cooper is what I'm saying. He's definitely a number 1 receiver for Dallas. At the bottom end of a wide receiver 1 for me as a number 12 on my ranking so far PPR-wise. Like, can you hear me? Can you see me now?
We can see you now, yeah.
Okay.
Mike,
okay, good.
Mike is legitimately flipping out right now.
Michael Gallup came in with a lot of steam, but he's not a number 1, not a number 1 yet. He could be in a couple years. I may not even warrant a roster position for him in some leagues that are shorter bench, but he could prove to be a worthy number 2 if Amari Cooper can bring his game up to where he's getting double teamed. So watch out for Michael Gallup, maybe wide receiver 4 at this point. Randall Cobb is going to exercise what he does best in the slot there, but you got to wonder if time hasn't passed up Randall Cobb. They bring, they've had Tavon Austin for quite a while here, running back / receiver, depending on what type of scoring system you have and what platform you're working on. He could be a running back and a wide receiver, so you get a dual threat out of him as a true flex player. Look for him to get some nods in the slot position. Look for them to get the ball to him. Bring in some new guys. That's all well and good, but, those are the main playmakers for Dallas. And, again, you're probably going to be at the borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 with Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I look at that, like you said, borderline wide receiver 1, and, look at wide receiver 2 with Amari Cooper. I don't disagree with that. I think that Amari – I was in the same boat that you were in, Mike, speaking on Amari Cooper and whether or not he was going – kind of questioning where he stood after, not really – he was getting outshined by Michael Crabtree in Oakland, and that was, to me, it was an issue. Obviously to see Amari Cooper kind of dip coming out of Alabama. He was a number 4 overall pick in the first round back in 2015 by the Oakland Raiders. So, to see how far he had fallen, I was questioning his health, questioning his ability to get open on the field and to do big things because he had been outshined by Michael Crabtree. So, the conversation of where does he stand was coming up a lot. Now the Cowboys need a lot of help because they got rid of Dez Bryant and had no other plan after that, and it was showing because Ezekiel Elliott was their best receiver, the best running back, maybe going to get to a point where he would be their best quarterback and kicker as well on the team. So Cooper to step in the way he did, and I've said this before, and whether people believe it or not, sometimes all it takes is switching a jersey to either help a player out or make a player look like a shell of themselves. It either works out really, really well, or it's kind of like, who the hell is this guy? And Amari Cooper, it worked out in the positive position. It made Jerry Jones look like a genius because of what the Cowboys were able to do and how they surged late in the year. So, I like Amari Cooper, but I am kind of, watching this one. So low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, I agree with, because I'm not high on him, but I'm pleasantly surprised of him, which puts him somewhere in the middle of my draft, unless there's a run on wide receivers, puts him maybe a little bit earlier. But it's kind of funny to see Allen Hurns, who is a number 2 in Jacksonville, Amari Cooper, who is supposed to be the 1 in Oakland, and Randall Cobb, who used to be the 1 in Green Bay. They're all on the same team right now. And then Tavon Austin was supposed to be a 1 with the Rams. He's on the team. So, this is kind of, what are these guys going to do? Is it the island of misfit toys, or is this a resurgence, a resurrection of some careers? So watch Randall Cobb, watch Hurns, watch Austin. These are all late guys in the draft. Somebody's going to take them. Somebody's going to take a flyer on Hurns. Somebody's going to take Randall Cobb. But kind of let them fall to you and not go after them. Amari Cooper's worth the pickup. Michael Gallup is worth a late addition because I do think that he is going to shine at some point. But it's going to be one of those things that I think might take a little bit of time to get him to shine. And Mike looks like he's really enjoying this conversation in this moment in time because he's frozen. So we got to get him. Facebook Live. It does what it does. It does the trick. But sometimes it makes it all the more adventurous to have Mike here on the line, as it's ever fun to have Mike. So let's grab Mike back onto the broadcast here, and let's get him back set with us. And so there he is. We have Mike Sofka back here hanging out with us on Fantasy Football Conversation here inside of our Fantasy Football Live simulcast that we have on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on wakeupcalldt.com, and on Facebook Live, facebook.com/live-now-dt. So it's always fun to get Mike here on the broadcast and have him hanging out with us. And now we are essentially going to continue the conversation here on our piece that we have. We're going to bring him back in here to XSplit and have him back set up here. So be with us momentarily. Mike is going to continue here with us on mixlr.com/live-now-dt. facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop. So we are continuing to carry Mike live here on Facebook, and he will be back with us in just a moment as we get him set and back onto the broadcast. So we thank you for being with us here for a moment, as live is live. And so Mike will be rejoining us here in just a second as he is jumping back on to the live feed with us. So we will have Mike here with us in just a moment. And we thank you once again, like I said, for taking some time with us and hanging out. So Mike is back here onto the broadcast. He's hanging out with us on Facebook Live, and we're having a good time here this morning. Mike, I wanted to get your thoughts on the situation that we have with the wide receivers of the New York Giants. So let's hop into the Giants and get your take on where the Giants are going right now. They spent a lot of money to bring in Golden Tate. I don't think that he is the answer by any stretch of the imagination. I do think he, was doing some good things in Detroit, which very much confused me as to why they would let him go. But he is now a New York Giant, and not only is he a New York Giant, but there are other guys in there trying to find their footing. Sterling Shepard still trying to find his place. So what are your thoughts on the Giants?
Yeah, Golden Tate is not Odell Beckham Jr. And I think everybody that's a New York Giant fan realizes that. But at the same time, Golden Tate's Golden Tate. He's capable of being a number one. It's just he has these flashes of brilliance, looks like he's a number one. Then I don't see him for a while, or then he doesn't do what he's supposed to be doing. I need consistency. I need points. I need points every week, especially in a PPR format. I need a guy who's getting the target. He's got himself in a position to be the number one target guy. But Sterling Shepard has been on the up for a couple years now. If I hear one more Cody Latimer story, if I hear, Cody Latimer, wait for Cody Latimer. Yeah. I've been waiting for that for years and years and years. Darius Slayton into the fold here. He looks like he might be able to do some damage if he can get on the field. Russell Shepard has had moments of brilliance. And Corey Coleman. We all saw Corey Coleman for the Browns, and we all saw him walk in on that, what's that show, The Hard Knocks, walk in and say, play me or trade me, why am I with their twos? And the next thing you know, he's off the team. This is the guy I was raving about just from a talent standpoint for the past couple years, but he can't seem to keep his mouth shut and perform. Now, if he can get on the field, for Corey Coleman's sake, I hope that he does well, and I hope he keeps his mouth shut. But, Corey, keep your mouth shut. You're a good ball player. Look, Evan Ingram's going to help out a little bit too, but we're talking about strictly wide receivers here. I don't see a true wide receiver one that I'm going to have. I see some wide receiver /twos in a Golden Tate followed up by a Sterling Shepard, and then I may make a wild card play in a flex or something. And if there's a roster where maybe a Corey Coleman and a Cody Latimer just for upside potential only. But the only guys I'm really relying on here, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard.
Yeah, I think Golden Tate's their best option because Sterling Shepard, in some of these depth charts is number one, but he's yet to show me what a number one is to him. He's out of Oklahoma, drafted in the second round, 40th overall in the draft of 2016, and he's never evolved and been the guy. He's been like the third option, and I still kind of think of him as such until he steps it up. Golden Tate was in a good situation in Detroit. It still confuses me that they had Marvin Jones Jr. as well as Golden Tate and Kenny Galladay, who looked to be getting along and looked to be doing well, and then they shipped off Golden Tate, which was very confusing. Golden Tate's been somewhat of a journeyman here quickly, and he was a free agent coming from Philadelphia, staying in the NFC East and going to the Giants. Seeing him bounce around really made no sense to me because I feel like I waited for Golden Tate to be a good player, and then he finally was a good player, and then they let him go. So very confusing. Corey Coleman's got to figure it out. Like you said, he came from the Cleveland Browns, who drafted him high. He was supposed to be one of the, saviors of the franchise, somebody to help them out, a young wide receiver that could do some good things. He got injured right away, and after getting injured, he came back. He played a few good games here and there, but injury was an issue, and just consistency was an issue. Cody Latimer, I've seen nothing of. Benny Fowler and Cody Latimer, they've done okay things. They're both coming from Denver. Fowler also went to the Patriots. Neither one of them wows me. Russell Shepard, another guy who, fails to wow me on this big thing here, this roster that they have of wide receivers with the Giants. It really comes down to what Golden Tate's going to do and if Sterling Shepard can step up. Outside of that, I see almost nothing here. I may take a flyer very late on Golden Tate, but I don't feel good about anybody with the Giants. I don't think there's any number one wide receiver. I would not even feel good about saying number two. I'm looking at some threes on here, and that's just how I feel until a situation arises where Golden Tate is going to step up in a big way. Not that he's not capable. I just feel bad for him that he ended up on the Giants, who seem to have a lot of issue with their wide receivers and their offense in general. If you're not named Saquon Barkley, it doesn't feel good in New York. Philadelphia is the next one I want to go to here. The Philadelphia Eagles have Alshon Jeffrey still, Nelson Aguilar. Deshaun Jackson is back after his hiatus, getting sent out by Chip Kelly. We have Mac Hollins, who came from North Carolina, and so on and so forth. Braxton Miller's also found his way over there, and Greg Ward Jr., two guys that were quarterbacks that were translated over to wide receivers in the NFL. Thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, I think two of their best wide receivers aren't wide receivers. I think they're tight ends, and Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. This is a situation where Alshon Jeffrey is clearly the number one guy there. They got some also Rams. They got some guys that are on the up. A guy that's on the up that I really like, dynasty format, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Go ahead and draft him late in your dynasty rookie draft and go ahead and stash him. Be patient with him. He may not have an immediate impact because, like I said, the number one focus, in my opinion, in this offense is to run the ball with the addition of Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. Throw the ball to Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, especially in the red zone. And then, your number one target, Alshon Jeffrey, who's a bottom-end wide receiver, too, in PPR formats. He's going to be the number one target as far as wide receivers go. But Deshaun Jackson, people have fond memories of Deshaun Jackson there in Philadelphia, and they should. He's been a speedster. I think he's a little long in the tooth. I think his days are short coming up, so don't look at any more than maybe a one-year rental from him. So definitely not a dynasty or a keeper-type guy. But Nelson Aguilar is somebody else who's going to be kind of battling with Deshaun Jackson, but not really, because Nelson Aguilar plays better from the slot. They thought he was going to be the number one a few years ago, but he plays a lot better, has a lot more production from the slot. So why ruin that? Why take that away? So, you're going to see Aguilar in the slot. You're going to see Jeffrey and Jackson on the outside, and most of the balls going to Ertz and company. But I think Alshon Jeffrey's worthy of a bottom-end wide receiver, too. Deshaun Jackson, he's a gamble as a wide receiver 3, maybe 4, probably more likely. And Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver 3 in that respect as well.
Yeah, again, like talking about the Giants, I think that this is a better situation than the Giants. And, I think Carson Wentz helps it to be better. But, ultimately, Alshon Jeffrey is a guy that you pick up a little bit later. I feel like he's one of those guys, and I know I've said it before about other players, he's someone that people will take higher than they need to. I know that there's some Philadelphia Eagles fans that have played within my wake-up call fantasy leagues before in Central New York. And so, and if you want to sign up, dtstays@gmail.com is where you go. But, when we look at this situation with Deshaun Jackson's return, it's the Philadelphia fan and also the feel-good. And that feel-good can get you in a lot of trouble because, it's like he's back. He was good when he was there, and then he went off and he went to Tampa, and is he going to make it? And then he's been all over the place. And so, so for me, not all over the place, but kind of all over the place as far as, stats-wise. He's been good but not great. He's played with a bunch of different quarterbacks in Tampa, if it's Fitz or it's Jameis and what he's going to get there. So Deshaun Jackson's back. Temper that. Be easy on that. Get him a Carvel cake and celebrate it, but don't draft him is what I'm trying to say right now, thinking, oh, my God, he's going to save my team. Probably not. He might save you 1 week of the season. Nelson Aguilar, I'm still waiting. When he was a rookie, I was high on him. I thought he was going to be good. He had a terrible rookie season. He came back and did a little bit better. But Nelson Aguilar is one of those inconsistent players. Alshon Jeffrey is the most consistency you're going to get, which I think makes him a wide receiver too, in my opinion. He's somebody that you would draft somewhere in the middle of the draft, depending on how things go. I would rather get him in round 7, but it depends on how things kind of shake out. Mac Hollins, I don't really see much of anything from him here. Greg Ward Jr. and Braxton Miller will be looking to make the team, but I think the best option, and we'll talk about it in the next show, is the tight end with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert being there. So there's some good tight ends that have found their way over to Philadelphia, as well as Richard Rodgers from Green Bay, who's their third stringer. So Alshon Jeffrey, the best option that you have in Philadelphia. I think it's better than any option with the Giants in New York, but that doesn't necessarily say much about my expectations. I mean, it's Alshon Jeffrey and then kind of wait and see on the rest of them. The Washington Redskins situation, they no longer have Jamison Crowder, and they have picked up some rookies in Washington, and they're trying to find their footing as far as where they're going to go with this season, looking at the fact that Dwayne Haskins is more than likely going to be their starting quarterback. Alex Smith had a gruesome injury, and God bless to him, and hope that he gets healthy and gets well as soon as possible. But what's your take, Mike, on the Washington Redskins and where they head right now?
Yeah, it's quite simple. You know, they're going to struggle a little bit. They're going to struggle a little bit just because of youth. They're going to struggle a little bit because there's some new pieces to the puzzle here. There's some talk that Dwayne Haskins is indeed going to be the starter. So you want to temper your wide receiver picks on that being a reality or not. Case Keenum, to me, this is a better move to let Case Keenum be the starter, let Haskins learn a little bit. But, you know, we're not in that society anymore. We're in the stand in front of the microwave, and that's why it's taken a minute for my thing to heat up.
Yeah.
We're very impatient. We want guys to get out there and perform now, right away. Even Peyton Manning threw a bunch of interceptions and struggled through a losing season his first year, and Peyton Manning arguably one of the greater quarterbacks of our recent past year. The bottom line is, if Haskins starts, look for an immediate connection to Terry McLaurin, his former teammate at Ohio State. Now, this is a wide receiver you target, especially in a dynasty format, and you sit back and have some patience, because wide receivers generally take about 3 years to gel and hit that performance level in the NFL, except if you're like a Randy Moss, then you throw out the book. McLaurin's not Randy Moss.
Yeah.
But there's a possibility and great connection and great chemistry already here on the roster. Look for them to try to build on that. Josh Dotson, I haven't seen or heard enough from you, my friend. I've tried you in the past. Paul Richardson, I'm over you. Sorry for your luck, Chuck. You're probably not on my roster. Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to take last year's performance, you know, and put it toward this year, because I know a lot of stuff happens, but you can't discount what's been done or not done in recent years with these guys. You have to grade them out somehow. You have to rank them somehow. And right now, Josh Dotson doesn't rank for me. Paul Richardson doesn't rank for me. And Terry McLaurin, he just ranks for me in a dynasty format. The show is going to continue to be the Jordan Reed show as long as he's healthy, and he has shown a little more health next year. Old man Vernon Davis in the fold as well. These are the trusted tight end targets that they like to get the ball to, especially in PPR format. But again, wide receivers, I got to see more before. You know, it's way early. This is June, but right now I don't see much here either.
No, and you know, and that's the sad part is really, I mean, if we're looking at the best wide receiver situations in the NFC East, the best situation is in Dallas, because Dallas has Cobb and Dallas has, you know, Gallup, who could step up here. He's a young guy who's got an opportunity, and Amari Cooper, who's looking to resurrect his career. So, you know, and he's looking for that big ticket. You know, he was a guy that was kind of getting lost in Oakland. He's still rather young. He did some good things last year. He does right again. Now all of a sudden he's the Cowboys' #1. We know that the Cowboys will pay and sometimes overpay. So, you know, this is a good situation for Dallas. For the Giants, like I said, it's underwhelming. There's no #1 guy fantasy-wise. For the Eagles, it's a little bit better with Alshon Jeffrey, but nobody after that. For the Redskins, Doxson hasn't shown anything. He's been injured. He hasn't been consistent. He's not a #1 guy. Paul Richardson never did anything for me in Seattle. He's not doing anything for me here. I like Mr. Irrelevant from a draft ago, and that is Trey Quinn out of SMU. I think he is wildly forgotten. I think he's wildly unthought of, and I'm excited about what Trey Quinn can do for this team. And Terry McLaurin, because they have Dwayne Haskins on the team. Now, with that being said, I'm not high on either one of them fantasy-wise. Grab them and stash them maybe. Maybe your 18th pick of 18 rounds, maybe that's where you go. Maybe you say in the final round of the Wake Up Call Fantasy Challenge, Terry McLaurin. or the final round of the Wake Up Call Fantasy Challenge, you make him Mr. Irrelevant for the second time in a row and you draft Trey Quinn. But I don't feel high on any of these guys. I feel better about Trey Quinn and Terry McLaurin than I feel about Paul Richardson and Josh Doxson. So that should tell you something. It means that it's kind of upside down, and the wide receiver situation to me in Washington is still wide open. And that's just where it sits. The NFC West wide receiver situations, Mike, I want to start in Arizona. Your thoughts on this? We have Kyler Murray, who's going to be running around. We have David Johnson, who we hope is going to be running the ball. And Arizona's got some wide receivers out there, and Christian Kirk, who was a rookie last year, and Larry Fitzgerald, who is back for his unprecedented 62nd season in the NFL. So what is your take on where we go from here with Arizona?
Look, Larry Fitzgerald's the perfect thing that this team needs right now. I'm glad for the wide receivers that he's there. He's going to be able to make an impact right away with these young guys. He's probably already had an impact on Christian Kirk. You bring in a Hakeem Butler. You bring in Isabella. You bring in a Keyshawn Johnson. Look, Chad Williams is Chad Williams. Kevin White's Kevin White at this point. But it's about the young guys. It's about making that solid connection with that rookie quarterback. It's about having that veteran presence in the huddle on the outside for Kyler Murray, knowing that he's got this guy with all sorts of great NFL talent, future Hall of Famer here. He's got this guy on his team. That's a great confidence booster for Kyler Murray. So good for Arizona that Larry's coming back for his umpteenth year. Good for Arizona that he's there to help and guide, and he's probably very proud to do it. A lot of times these veterans are like, my job is not to teach these other guys. My job is to get ready and win games. I get that. But your job as a teammate, your job as a man in life is to pull up the guy next to you if he's drowning. Your job is to make sure everybody around you gets better with your presence. Otherwise, you have no business being in the locker room. So I think Larry Fitzgerald is the perfect fit for that. I think he's going to do this team miles more than we could ever see on paper or even in a fantasy format in aiding and helping the young wide receivers and helping in the development of a Kyler Murray. That being said, there's a new offense as well. I look for Larry to adjust to this rather easily with his NFL experience, but it's going to take some of the confidence that he has away, but he dare not show that to any of the other wide receivers or to Kyler Murray. This is a good thing for Arizona Cardinal fans, not necessarily a good thing for fantasy football fans, though. Larry Fitzgerald's maybe a wide receiver 3. Christian Kirk's maybe wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 at the best, probably a flex guy, maybe a bench guy for you until they prove something more. The good news is they don't really have any solid tight ends there right now that I can identify outside of Caleb Wilson, who they just brought in. I don't think Ricky Seals-Jones or Charles Clay strikes fear in anybody's eyes. So the targets are definitely going to go to wide receivers and some David Johnson out of the backfield. But, again, no real wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 threat here on the team.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with Mike Sofka here this morning that, if Arizona doesn't really have the wow factor right now. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald is going to be invaluable to Christian Kirk. I said that I believe that Christian Kirk will eventually be the guy to take over and be the main source of wide receiver income, so to speak, for the Arizona Cardinals. And as the depth chart looks right now, he's right behind Larry Fitzgerald. So it looks like that's starting to make itself happen. But I believe it's going to come to a reality. I think Christian Kirk is going to end up being the guy. I think he is the future. And, but at the same time, fantasy football-wise, where do you go with it? Now, Kevin White's on the team after being a free agent from Chicago. He was drafted 7th overall in the first round in 2015 out of West Virginia, got hurt right away, was really not the same since. And so him being on the team, it adds some depth, but he also has to stay healthy, which is something that's affected him throughout his career, and hopefully he will this time around. I mean, this team really is very reliant when it comes to throwing the ball. When the ball is going to go out in the air, they are still extremely reliant on Larry Fitzgerald. Even though he's been around the block for a while, he was brought in 2004. That was 15 seasons ago. He is still the number one guy, which speaks volumes to him He is an eloquent speaker, a consummate professional, just looks like a leader, every bit of a leader, the way he dresses, the way he acts, the way he carries himself, his humbleness. It's a beautiful thing, and his dedication to Arizona through all of the ups and downs and around the corners and all the quarterbacks that he's had to play with, from John Skelton to Drew Stanton to Carson Palmer to Kurt Warner to Josh Rosen to now Kyler Murray and so on and so forth. So, I give him a lot of credits. He is the biggest leader on this team, one of the biggest leaders in the NFL. He's someone that I would love to sit down with and do a show with on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora someday. God, if you're listening, and I know you are, I would love to do that. So, as far as Fitz goes, his numbers aren't what they used to be. He's not trusted like he used to be, but he's still a guy that if you want to put him on at the bottom of your draft, it's okay to do. Christian Kirk, I do think that he's a sleeper in this draft. I do think he's someone you could sneak in that could help you out. I got that good feeling, that gut feeling, that something feeling about Christian Kirk. I'm going to keep that rolling because it started last year when he was a rookie. So Fitz and Kirk are not high, but I would like to think that Kirk can get some things done this season, and we're going to see a passing of the torch sooner than later from Larry Fitzgerald. The Los Angeles Rams, Mike, what do you have for this?
Yeah, this is an interesting grouping of receivers on my ranking sheet, meaning that they rank 16, 18, and 19 on my wide receiver rankings right now. And I'm talking, of course, I'm talking Brandon Cooks, I'm talking Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. Now, they're in that order, 16, 18, 19. So Cooks, Woods, and Kupp. However, if I'm in a dynasty format, I'm probably looking at more so of a guy. Let's say I'm in a startup dynasty or a startup keeper situation. I'm probably looking at a Cooper Kupp. In a PPR format, I'm definitely looking at Robert Woods. I think that Cooks is the guy that's going to stretch the field. Woods may even get more targets than Cooks this year. And Cooper Kupp was injured a little bit last year. So what happened? He goes off the field for a while, and Josh Reynolds fills in nicely here. So there's your flyer guy right there. There's your injury guy. There's your last pick in the draft, Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. If you look at your league scoring system, I don't say this enough, and I should say it more. Check your league scoring system. A lot of leagues now warrant return yards, whether it's punt return or kick return. If that's the case, take a no-name guy, pick him up off waivers, or maybe get him into your last pick of the draft, and then JoJo Natson, who is listed as a wide receiver, but he's really going to be the return guy. He's going to be the punt return and the kick return guy. Not every team does it like that. Sometimes they have more than one guy for kick returns, and sometimes they have a defensive back or somebody for punt returns. This is a unique situation for you to pick up some value at the wide receiver position or in a flex position for those bye weeks. This is the guy who's going to collect some points just because he's getting the returns. And believe me, they're going to have some returns. He's going to have kickoff returns. Why? Because the Rams score a lot. And when the Rams score a lot, the other team's forced to keep up and score a lot. So when the other team has to score a lot, well, they're going to be kicking off the ball a lot. Same thing with punts. The Rams defense isn't bad. They're going to force a lot of punts as well. So it's an excellent opportunity for you to pick up some very affordable and valuable wide receiver points for virtually no cost to you in the draft in JoJo Natson. So again, to recap, 16 on my rankings is Brandon Cooks, 18 is Robert Woods, and 19 is Cooper Kupp. Nice grouping there. If you can get all three, that would be a coup right there, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is that this is one of those situations where, when I looked at a couple seasons ago, Golden Tate, Kenny Galladay, and Marvin Jones Jr., they were all kind of together, in my opinion. And if you got them all, you were good. You covered your bases because, 2 out of 3 were going to step up or 1 out of 3, but somebody was going to do something from week to week more often than not. And that's how it feels here because Cooks has his moments and then Woods has his moments, but Cooper Kupp is the guy that I kind of trust the most. If it's up to me, I'm drafting Cooper Kupp first, and then I'm looking at Robert Woods, and then maybe Brandon Cooks, because Brandon Cooks I'm not as sold on as the other guys. Robert Woods resurrected his career coming out of USC, going to Buffalo, doing nothing there, and then coming over and switching coasts and going to the Pacific side of things and making good with the Los Angeles Rams. Cooper Kupp has been fun since he came in. The worst thing about Cooper Kupp is when he's not on the field due to injury. When he is on the field, he's a threat. Josh Reynolds has stepped in before, so if somebody is to get hurt or go down, he's a guy to look at. He had some good moments. He's a grab and stash. He's a guy to put on your bench just in case. So there's 4 wide receivers, and for all the conversations we've had recently here, Mike, of the Arizona Cardinals that don't have a lot to give to Philadelphia, the New York Giants, and Washington without a lot to give. This is a separate situation, a totally different situation for the Rams. They have essentially, if you draft Woods, Cooks, or Kupp, you feel good. And if you get Reynolds, you got a little, grab and stash type of guy. So this is a different type of scenario, kind of, bending it back the right way and giving us something to be happy about, because it's dark and dingy in the NFC East, and in the NFC West, it's starting to light up here a little bit. You'd like to think that Jared Goff can get the ball out there to these guys, and Kupp is my favorite, and then Woods, and then Cooks, or Woods and Cooks may be interchangeable. But like you said, if you could get them all, or 2 out of 3, you're in good shape. It's how I felt about Detroit in the past, and that's where I think things are heading, is that, these guys are going to kind of help each other out. The great thing about it is if you have one but you don't have the other 2, they do open up space for each other because they're all a threat on the field. And so that makes the Rams a good team to draft a wide receiver from, because the guys help each other out, and there is no strict guy where everybody is shifting their defense to. They kind of have to be set for everybody, and it's really hard to be prepared for what I consider, in my opinion, 4 different receivers that are going to be a danger out there. From that to the receiver situation, the quarterback that costs a lot of money, that just signed a new contract, Mr. Russell Wilson with the Seattle Seahawks, he's good, right? Fantasy-wise, he's kind of inconsistent. His numbers look good at the end of the season, but they don't always feel good and help you win your fantasy games from week to week. On top of all of that, I am wildly not impressed but with Seattle's wide receiver crew. I haven't been for a long time. They don't have Paul Richardson anymore. We talked about him being in Washington. I've seen nothing of him from either place. Doug Baldwin is still there out of Stanford in 2011 going to Seattle, and he was an undrafted free agent. So from going from undrafted free agent in 2011 to the number 1 guy in Seattle, beautiful story, amazing story. And at the same time, for me, as great as that reality story is, the fantasy story is, Doug Baldwin doesn't help you win games necessarily, and more often than not. And Tyler Lockett is a guy out of Kansas State that I'm really not sold on as well. They're the 2 best options that they have. And then they have David Moore and Jerron Brown and Malik Turner and yada, yada, yada. And then they have Keenan Reynolds, who I covered at Navy, who switched over to wide receiver and who was a free agent May of last year, coming over from the Skins to the Seattle Seahawks after being with the Ravens. So, I mean, thoughts on this? It seems to just be more of the same, in my opinion. Russell's got to throw the ball to somebody. I just never feel like there's consistency in fantasy. So what is your take on this?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Baldwin this year. He's going to be, probably done here, maybe retiring due to injury. It's a shame, but it is what it is. Tyler Lockett is going to be a guy that you're going to look at as your number 1. Watch out for DK Metcalf. I know he's just drafted here, but, DK Metcalf, this is the guy that came in shirt off, introduced himself to Pete Carroll how to take his shirt off. It was, great. He's an outstanding physical specimen. Well, he also blew him away at the combine, and, he also can catch the ball. And, he's also pretty fast. So this is a guy who you can look at as a potential number 1 receiver, him and Gary Jennings. And there's a chance that Gary Jennings also new to the team here. This is a chance for Gary Jennings to really step up. Watch out. That's a hidden name. That's a dark name. We'll be talking about him more on the site in the months to come. But tuck that name away into Gary Jennings. I don't think Jerron Brown is going to be a major threat to either one of these guys, but I do think that a David Moore, who had a good showing last year, warrants a look by a lot of people. Look, the bottom line is Tyler Lockett's the number 1, and he's going to be my 19th guy on my rankings PPR-wise. DK Metcalf probably going to warrant just being a number 3 for you, maybe a 4, just based on the newness, the number of targets, the quickness of the game. They're saying that this is going to be the guy. They're saying he's a man beast. I'm going to hold that. I'm going to reserve that until I see more in the preseason and so forth and through training camp. but my grade on him is cautious as a wide receiver 3 right now. But Tyler Lockett's the wide receiver 1 there, but again, he's number 19 on my rankings.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of stated it, but I don't really feel good about anybody on this team. I mean, DK Metcalf is someone that I want to see something from, hence why we have our wake-up call fantasy drafts in Central Florida and Central New York at the end of August, beginning of September for those purposes, because I want to get through training camp. I want to get some feels. I want to see what's out there, and I want to, maybe get to see some preseason games and see if he's thrown out there and what guys are out there to kind of showcase what they can do. So, I mean, DK Metcalf is not a bad guy to pick up, and we will have a show strictly. Mike and I will talk one of these Wednesdays coming up just on rookies, and we'll get to that. So, DK, I know the combine looked great, but, during his career in college, it was so-so. Wasn't the main guy, but then he looks really good in the combine, but the combine doesn't always state what it's going to be like. So, DK can rise up this thing because of the fact of the Baldwin situation and because Lockett really hasn't stepped up, and David Moore's been okay. But when I draft these guys, it's underwhelming. When I draft Seattle Seahawks wide receivers, I don't feel good, which makes me not want you to have to be through that situation. So I would say just look to the other teams in the NFL. There are worse off situations like the New York Giants. So, I would take Seattle over that, and maybe Seattle over Washington with different, with a lot of stuff. So, I mean, Lockett and Moore, I question. I'd probably lean on Lockett. DK Metcalf, I may take a flyer on, but we'll get into the rookies as we step forward here in this conversation. The San Francisco 49ers, Mike, what do you have for this one? We're hoping that we're going to finally have a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, who has never taken over a team for an entire season in New England or in San Francisco. This is his first chance to do so, that he is healthy. He's had other chances before, but we're hoping that we actually get to see the man out of Eastern Illinois take over for a full calendar NFL season and see what he could do. Your thoughts on his wide receivers and the situation there, as they've added Jordan Matthews from Philadelphia this past March. Trent Taylor is back. Dante Pettis is there as well. He's risen up the charts after being drafted in the second round, 44th overall in 2018 out of Washington. And Marquise Goodwin out of Texas, who is a free agent from Buffalo in 2017, he is now their number one guy. So, needless to say, Buffalo, whenever you let go of your wide receivers, they become really good in other places. Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Goodwin now. What's your take on the situation in San Fran?
Yeah, well, for a guy that's being very good in a Marquise Goodwin, they still went out and got some guys. So that tells me they're not sold on a Marquise Goodwin, and I'm not sold on him either. Ranks number 70 as the number one receiver in San Fran on my rankings. So that leaves a lot to be desired. The number one receiver on their team is George Kittle, the tight end. Look, Dante Pettis was supposed to be something he's not yet. Still patient, still young in his career. They go out and they get a Deebo Samuel, who's probably going to start this year for him. A Jalen Hurd, who has some opportunities to get a lot of playing time this year. Jordan Matthews, I'm not worried about. Richie James was supposed to be something by now. He's not. Kendrick Bourne, Trent Taylor, these guys were all supposed to be something or not. So maybe it's because Garoppolo wasn't there. I'm going to give them a lot of slack here before I totally just forget these guys. I'm going to look at their preseason. I'm going to see what Trent Camp brings this year, see what kind of connections Garoppolo can make to these guys. Remember, Garoppolo wasn't around long enough here to develop any real relationship with these receivers, and sometimes that's all it takes is that relationship, that confidence, that knowing that guy's going to be where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be, knowing that Garoppolo's going to make a back shoulder throw on this route more likely. Those little relationship-building things mean everything, and right now they don't have any of that in San Fran. If you can be patient, if you're in a dynasty startup or a keeper league, you're drafting rookies, Deebo Samuel's a guy you want. Go ahead and take a Jalen Hurd way late as well. But again, I don't see anything on here that excites me or says that I have to roster any of these guys in a redraft format.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, going out and getting Deebo Samuel, who they drafted, and brought him in the second round, and then in the third round, Jalen Hurd. So they went back-to-back wide receiver and picks after getting Nick Bosa is the second overall pick of the 2019 NFL draft, defensive end out of Ohio State. They went and got Deebo Samuel out of South Carolina in round number 2, and in round number 3 got Jalen Hurd out of Baylor and brought him in. So, the thought is that they're leaving this thing wide open. They want to have weapons, obviously, for their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, to let him go out there and let it fly. So, Goodwin has something to prove. Pettis, Jordan Matthews, they all do. Trent Taylor, nobody's safe. So this is another situation where we don't know who the number one guy is going to be, but a healthy Garoppolo is going to make some guys dangerous out there. A Pettis or a Goodwin is somebody to maybe consider grabbing and stashing late. A Jordan Matthews is one to watch. Does he make the team? Does it make sense to pick up a guy like him? But ultimately, this is one of those, I watch the waiver wire, I watch free agency. A couple weeks into the season, I go and grab maybe a Deebo Samuel or a Jalen Hurd based on what Jimmy Garoppolo is doing. The next one here is the NFC South, the situations with the Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's start with Carolina. Your thoughts on the team where Cam Newton is the best wide receiver, tight end, kicker, punter, running back, front office manager, concession stand worker, as well as the line painter on the field. He is still the guy in Carolina, which means that the fantasy numbers go through him. If not him, then Christian McCaffrey. Do you feel good about anybody in Carolina at wide receiver?
Yeah, I do, actually. I feel real good about it. DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a guy who was tops on my wide receiver rookie rankings last year. If you were able to pick him up in a dynasty or keeper format, you're really feeling good. I'm not sure he's your number one guy coming out this year. I'm not sure he's the guy that you're going to say, oh, I got to take him first round. No, he's a wide receiver 2/3, but he's going to get a lion's share of the targets. Torrey Smith looks like he's still got some game left in him here. So look out for Torrey Smith to make an impact. Chris Hogan, Curtis Samuel, who looks good on paper, has had some flashes of brilliance. But, let's face it. For the past couple of years, where's the ball been going to? It's been going through Cam, but when they pass the ball, it's gone to Greg Olsen. Well, Greg Olsen coming back from injury, Ian Thomas looking like he's going to take over that spot. So don't think just because you have DJ Moore, you're getting all the red zone targets. No, they go tight end there. No, they have Christian McCaffrey who gets the ball out of the backfield. And watch out out of the backfield of Elijah Holyfield out of Georgia and Jordan Scarlett out of Florida. These are guys that can pound the rock. That's important to this passing game. They got to take some of that pounding off Cam. Watch for them to use less of Cam, trying to retrain Cam, which is hard because probably since age 5, this is the way he's played the ball game. He's probably been the best guy on the team, every team he's been on, and that's why he's able to call his own number as frequently as he can. Look for that to be tempered down some, and look for him to try to stretch the ball out. And because of this improved running game and these guys that are going to be behind Christian McCaffrey, look for them to be able to stretch the field more as teams get lulled up into the box as they continue to pound the rock. Look for DJ Moore to have a solid year, but again, temper your expectations. Wide receiver 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, DJ Moore, like you said, drafted first round, 24th overall last year. Out of Maryland, Torrey Smith, also out of Maryland, so got that Maryland love. Chris Hogan out of Monmouth coming to them as a free agent in April of this year, just a couple months ago from New England. So I like the fact that Hogan's there because there's going to be some people checking on him and spying on him because he's a Patriot. So it'll be interesting to see what can happen here. Curtis Samuel, like you said, he's got some moves, he's got some speed, he's got some moments. They can kind of hand him the ball immediately, do a wide receiver reverse, let him do his thing. So, there's some of these guys that I like, but this is a flex position type of situation. Hogan, Samuel, Smith, they're flex guys. DJ Moore, he's a guy that I would consider taking and put him on my team. I give him a second slot or a third slot type of situation. I do like the fact that he's young, but I want to see Cam do more. The best situation in Carolina is still Christian McCaffrey. Then I think Cam Newton. Then maybe Greg Olsen, potentially, then everybody else. DJ Moore's got to steal that. It's been a long time since a wide receiver has really done anything in Carolina. They spent that high pick on Kelvin Benjamin. It didn't go anywhere. So DJ Moore is the next iteration of the high pick and seeing if it goes anywhere. Cam's got to let go of the ball for that to happen. I still feel the best, like I said, about McCaffrey and Newton, but DJ Moore is a guy that I would pick, I would draft, I would put on my team. I would have some faith and some trust in. The rest of the guys are flex guys to me that I would look to maybe potentially do something that I'm not going to be mad if I picked him up, but I'm not overly expecting Curtis Samuel to be consistent. I would love if he can be because he's such a weapon. And Chris Hogan, it depends on what he does. Normally when guys leave the Patriots, it doesn't always work out. And Torrey Smith, he's there to take some pressure off of DJ Moore, but is he going to be catching a lot of passes? Carolina does get wide receiver work in, and they do have highlight reels. So they're not guys that I would leave off of my roster. They're just guys that I would pick late on my roster. And like I said, a lot of it is flex. DJ Moore is the one that I would lean on more than anybody. The New Orleans Saints, they have this guy called Drew Brees. He's pretty darn good. Alvin Kamara is there to take some pressure off in a big way. Latavius Murray is going to try and do something with his career here, as it's been rather quiet lately. Michael Thomas is the lead guy for the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees to get out to. Traquan Smith, who you and I both know from UCF down in Orlando, Florida, from covering him, he was drafted in the 3rd round, 91st overall out of UCF in 2018. I told people to watch out for Traquan Smith. When he was at the bottom of the depth chart, I said, I think he's going to rise. Watch him make this team. I believe in this. I want UCF to prove itself again and again and again. Traquan's now number 2 on the depth chart. Ted Ginn Jr. is 1,000 years old. He's still there. Cam Meredith has to figure this out because he did some good things in Chicago, and then he got really quiet last year, and then he got hurt. So he has to really find his spots. But ultimately, Michael Thomas and Traquan Smith, I think, is a really good 1-2 punch. And I think that there's going to be some fantasy value in this. I honestly think that if you're smart enough to draft Traquan Smith, he's going to win you some games.
Yeah, Traquan Smith is a bit of a stretch still for me. I think that, he's going to have some big plays. He seems like a big play receiver. Remember, he's the one that was on the back end of that Breeze catch to put him over the yardage marker for the all-time yardage passer. And he only needed the yardage he got when he caught the ball, but his yak kicked in, he broke a tackle and ran for a touchdown. So it was a historical play. It's going to look great on film for years to come, but he's not where he needs to be yet, and that's okay. He's a young receiver. So he doesn't rank that high for me. He's got the upside. He's got the potential. So, again, if I'm in a startup keeper or dynasty, that's somebody I'm going to look at. Ted Ginn, not so much. Other end of the spectrum. Very long in the tooth, been around forever, been plagued by injuries recently, but when he's able to be on the field, he still has breakaway gamer speed. He can still make the move. If he can make one guy miss, he might be gone. So he's still a threat at his old age. Thus, the reason why he's still on the field, or they're still giving him the opportunity. Michael Thomas is a number 1 receiver. He can easily be your number 1 receiver as well. He's number 5 or 6 on my rankings right now. Let me just double check that. I'm sorry, he's tied at 4, which is essentially 5 with Odell Beckham. So this is a guy that's going to be getting most of the targets. He's going to get a lot of the times where they're stretching the ball just beyond the red zone to score. He's the target. He's the guy that Drew Brees is looking for that performance, and rightfully so. He's earned that right, and he's proven that he's capable of being let me back that up. He's proven he's capable of being the number 1 receiver on just about any team, and he does real well on a pass-oriented team like the New Orleans Saints. The number 1 receiver on the team may be Alvin Kamara, though, and that's okay. That's his job. And Michael Thomas has a job. So just talking about receivers here, that doesn't really affect Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara getting those touches, getting those targets as well. But it enhances him, makes Michael Thomas become what Michael Thomas is. When you have a lot of weapons, the other team's got to respect every position. They can't just double up that one guy all the time. So he's another one of the big playmakers. Michael Thomas is definitely a guy you can draft as your wide receiver 1. These other guys are also comes right now. I'm not counting on any of them. But look for the best name on the team, Lil Jordan Humphrey. Look out for that guy. That's his name, Lil Jordan, Lil apostrophe Jordan. That's his first name. That's hilarious to me. I hope he makes some highlight reels. I want to hear that name.
I want to see somebody say Lil Jordan coming up big. That's what that's what you do. Lil Jordan coming up big, and if not, and here's the thing with the Saints, they have Lil Jordan and they also have Lil Wayne. So Lil seems to be in a good position in the New Orleans area. Traquan, I like. I'm going to take him somewhere. I agree with Mike that he hasn't done this plethora of greatness, but I do like him a little bit more than Sofka is letting off here right now. And on your side, I do tend to like him a little bit more. Michael Thomas, somebody always takes a little bit higher than I want to take him, so I don't usually have him on my team. I like Michael Thomas, but I think Breeze is going to throw to the guy that gets open. So I like Traquan Smith. If I miss on Thomas and I get Traquan, I'm okay with it. The Atlanta Falcons have Julio Jones. Julio Jones has had foot trouble. He's had ankle trouble. Obviously it's something he'll play injured, which ultimately affects him in a negative way toward the end of the season. So let me just say that about Julio Jones. He's a good receiver, but he has to stay healthy, and hopefully he does. Mohamed Sanu is in a position right now where, he's still supposed to be the number 2 guy. He had over 700 yards in 2017 with the Falcons, over 800 last year. He had 5 touchdowns in 17, 4 touchdowns in 2018. It's underwhelming. It's okay, but Calvin Ridley is there now. Calvin Ridley is supposed to take some help here. The thing is, they have to key in on Jones and also Sanu and Ridley. The problem is because Sanu and Ridley have not really bumped themselves up, and I know that Ridley was a rookie last year, but because they haven't put themselves in a high position, you can still cheat and double team Julio Jones because there's not a true number 2. I'd like to see Ridley take it over this year. So what's your take on the Atlanta situation at wide receiver?
Well, the Atlanta wide receivers go as Matt Ryan goes. And real simple, last year we saw something very unique in Calvin Ridley stepping way up early on with getting 6 or 7 touchdowns before Julio Jones even had 1. But Julio Jones is still the guy there. Don't mix anything up. Julio Jones is still worthy of being one of the top receivers in the league, number 3 on my rankings. Julio Jones is the man. He's going to get a lion's share of the targets. Mohamed Sanu getting a little long in the tooth. This might be the last year or bust for Mohamed Sanu. Calvin Ridley, again, has the pedigree, has the guys around him to be successful. It takes time. He did have some immediate success. If you were in a touchdown-only league, you were loving him. He wasn't getting the yards, but he was getting the touchdowns. And then you look at what they brought in this year. They brought in 5 new receivers. These are no-name guys. I'm going to read you the name of these guys. If you can tell me where any one of them went to school, I might give you some sort of prize here. Marcus Green, Sean Baines, C.J. Wharton, Khalil Lewis, and Olamide Zacchaeus. Can you tell me where any of these guys went to school? Probably not. If you're an average fan, probably not. Well, that's our job. We're going to do this research for you. And as these guys begin to develop and break away and make a name for themselves, we're going to bring that to you. But right now, none of these guys are guys you can even roster or draft, especially in a redraft position. Look at Julio Jones as your number 1. Look at Calvin Ridley in a touchdown-only league as a red zone monster for you.
That coming from Mike Sofka here with the Atlanta Falcons conversation, and we're bringing Mike back in here in just a second here as we continue the conversation here with the Atlanta Falcons. And, looking at Atlanta and kind of what they bring to the table, I mean, Julio Jones had over 1,600 yards last season. He had single digits when it came to touchdowns. So, Julio Jones is not necessarily your touchdown king, but he is the guy that's going to get you the yardage. And, the yardage is important ultimately. In my leagues, I've been rewarding people a lot more so for yardage as the seasons have gone on. So it's an important thing to have. It's an important thing to pay attention to. It's an important thing to mention that we have, that situation where, you can have a guy like Julio Jones who's going to get you over 1,600 yards and do what he needs to do. And, the man has been good. He stayed relatively healthy in recent history. The hope is that he's going to continue to. It's kind of always in the back of my mind with Julio Jones, his health and where he stands in that respect. But ultimately, when it all shakes out, Julio Jones's numbers are insane. 113 receptions last season, 1,677 yards, 8 touchdowns. He also attempted, he had a couple of attempts running the ball and whatnot in the season. I like Julio Jones. He's still high. He's still a top 10 guy. He's still somebody to pick up, and maybe I'd say he's like number 7 or something like that. I'll have my rankings coming out soon. Mohamed Sanu has just never impressed me from Cincinnati to Atlanta. Calvin Ridley, he did some good things. To me, it's Julio Jones and then Calvin Ridley. I think Ridley's a guy you can get later on in the draft. You could pick him up, between rounds maybe 4 through 6 or 4 through 7. But Julio Jones is going to go early. I'm still high on Julio. As long as he's healthy, I'm good with him, obviously. And I know you could say that about anybody, but, when his health comes into question or he plays injured, that's the good thing is he'll play hurts because he gives you those extra weeks that somebody else wouldn't give you. The problem is at the end of the day, it ends up catching up with him. So his health is important. It's paramount. I hope he stays healthy. I think the Alabama guys are going to get it done. I think it's Jones and Ridley. I like them both. I think Ridley's going to have a good sophomore season, and I'm excited to see what they're going to put forward because Matt Ryan continues to impress. And as time goes by, he may not be as, oh, my God, graphic-wise. He may not be going back and looking at the tape going, Matty Ryan doing this, that, and the other thing, but he's still one of the best quarterbacks out there, and he's still getting it done. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have Jameis Winston as their starter once again. Mike Evans is out there. Chris Godwin has stepped it up. Brashad Perriman went from Orlando to Tampa via Baltimore as he went from UCF to the Ravens, and ultimately he is now down with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bobo Wilson from Florida State was undrafted in 2017. He's there as well. So you got a connection there with Florida State between Winston and Wilson. You have Perriman in the connection to Florida, but ultimately you have Evans as the main target and Chris Godwin as the second piece. What do you think about this one, Mike?
Yeah, it's all Mike Evans. But, last week we talked about the Jaguars duo from back in the day, and you threw in who that was, and that was Jimmy Smith and
Keenan McCardell.
That's right, Keenan McCardell. Keenan McCardell here on this team is a Chris Godwin. You need Chris Godwin. Get Chris Godwin. I'm going to say this one more time. Get Chris Godwin. He's number 21 on my ranking. He's a stronger wide receiver, too, than that. If they're going to double up Mike Evans, Chris Godwin's going to make you pay. O.J. Howard is going to have a huge year this year, especially in the red zone. I know we're talking about wide receivers. There's question marks in the running game with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones. There's question marks on the defense. That's why they brought some new help in. That's why they brought in Stu. That's why they drafted Devin White. There's questions all around this team. The one area there's not a lot of questions is a wide receiver. That, to me, says this team may be losing some games, maybe down in some games, and maybe throwing the ball a lot. If you're throwing the ball a lot, that's a good recipe to be a wide receiver on that team.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is going to get all the targets. He's going to get all the looks. But Chris Godwin's going to get those secondary looks, and that's going to be huge. Can Jameis get him the ball? Now, we've talked a lot about Jameis, whether he's a leader of men, whether he should even be on the team, whether he can continue to perform. Look, this is what they got. This is what they're going with. This is what you got to do is analyze how that affects you and your fantasy team. Get you some Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is a wide receiver 1. Right now, Chris Godwin is a low wide receiver 2, but he's got tremendous upside, and he's got green arrows pointing all the way up. That means if you have to overdraft him a little bit, that's fine, but don't get crazy with it. Chris Godwin is a guy to definitely target.
Yeah, you said Chris Godwin more than I think he said his own name or his mom has ever said his name. But I'm with you on Chris Godwin, and I like it, and I'm for it. Mike Evans is a guy to pick up, but Chris Godwin's a guy that's going to get a lot of touches, a lot of opportunities, and I like what he's done. Last year, he brought his 1 touchdown from a season before to 7 last year. He got more than 300 yards added on to what he had a season before, and that was only on 59 receptions at 842 yards and 7 touchdowns. So I like it. I like what Chris Godwin can do. He's young. He's only 23 years old. So where we go from here, I think, is up for Godwin. I think he's a great pick to have. And, Mike Evans is obviously the guy. They want to go to him in the red zone. They want to target him. They want to have him go up and get it. But Chris Godwin is another person for that good 1-2 punch. And dare I say it, I think Tampa Bay has got a better situation than a lot of the NFC East. So there's good stuff there, but it runs through Evans and Godwin and then Howard and Brate at tight end, which we'll talk about on next week's show on Wednesday when we head into July. We're now heading into the final piece of this NFC wide receiver fantasy football advisory board of conversation. And we're going to start with the Green Bay Packers. Randall Cobb is now a Dallas Cowboy, so that has obviously changed. Green Bay has seen some changes over time. Davante Adams is their number one guy. Marquez Valdez-Scantling from South Florida, drafted in the 5th round last year, is one of the guys that's stepping up here or needs to step up here. Geronimo Allison, an undrafted free agent out of Illinois in 2016, is also there. And Equanimous, one of my favorite names in the NFL, Equanimous St. Brown, which sounds like the name of a horse in the Kentucky Derby, is from Notre Dame, and he is a 6th rounder in 2018. Those are the names to know because one of these 3 guys has to become the number 2. What are your thoughts on this, Mike? We got a very, very healthy pick at Davante Adams with what he's been able to do fantasy-wise, and then we have 3 other guys looking to find their spot.
Yeah, it's not a great place to be. They still have a big presence in Jimmy Graham, the red zone target, and then they go out and draft Jay Sternberger, who is also a big red zone target. So not a lot of red zone opportunities possibly for some of these receivers. Davante Adams is a clear-cut number 1. He can be your number 1 receiver. He's number 2 on my rankings, only behind DeAndre Hopkins and just ahead of Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, and Michael Thomas on my rankings here. So, look, Davante Adams is the guy you're going to target, but at the same time, I don't think you're going to go through any situation where your team's going to lose if you don't get him. Equanimous St. Brown, love the name. I don't think he's where he needs to be yet. I don't think this is going to be the year yet. Geronimo Allison looks like he could have more of an impact, injured much of last year. That was the reasoning behind seeing more of St. Brown and seeing more of Valdez-Scantling. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's going to be the number 2 guy there. Now, I want to be clear. Davante Adams is the clear-cut number 1. He's way up here. These other guys are way down here. There's not 1, 2, and 3. It's more like a 1, a 4, a 5, and a 6 is what I'm telling you. So don't count on any of these guys. Don't run out and pick them. Don't spend a big draft pick. Pick them up on the wire or burn a late draft pick if you have a big bench. But Davante Adams, you can be sure that you're going to have some positive things happen on your team if you do draft them.
Yeah, Davante Adams, I love him. He's bailed me out. He's given me a lot of success. He's a guy that I get that little chill on my shoulder about. He's one that I'm going to take that early pick on. I'm going to go off and get him. You better get him before I do. That's the way that I look at it. So a big fan of Davante Adams and what he does. Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think that, like you said, you think Valdez-Scantling's going to be the number 2. I think they're both going to fight for it. I think that there's always talent in Green Bay to kind of take over and do some good things, but we're a long ways away from the Robert Brooks and those type of feelings and whatnot. So now it's time for somebody to step up and really become the guy. And Davante has done that over the past couple seasons. He did that when Randall Cobb was still the number 1. He was still pulling number 1 numbers. He had double-digit touchdowns when he was the number 2. I like that he's the number 1. This is also a situation, though, where these other 3 gentlemen have to create opportunities for themselves so that they can pull some of that double team and pull some of that focus off of Davante. Yet he is one of the wide receivers that I trust in the NFL that if you put it on him, he's still going to go out and get it. So I like Davante very, very, very much so. I'm highly sold on Davante Adams, and I like what he's doing out there for this team. So I'm heavy on Davante, feeling good about Davante. And as we move forward from that to kind of look at, the rest of the NFC North and get with Mike on this to jump into the next team that we have. So really it's Davante Adams and then everybody else just kind of falls in after somewhere. But you got to hope that one of those guys will step up. It's either going to be Valdez-Scantling to me or it's going to be Geronimo Allison that's going to step it up is the way that I kind of look at it from here as we move forward. So in this final piece, Mike, as we look at this, there he is. Oh, my God. OMG. So we have Chicago Bears. And, I think it's all the stuff I say about the Kardashians. Kim is tapping into it, and she's going, Mike, freeze. Freeze, oh, my God. So I think she's in it. And, we know that when she gets involved with the athletes, their careers are over. So she's trying to halt the show. It's not going to work, Kim Kardashian. You and I were born on the same day. And I think that that's God's humor. But, happy birthday anyways, October 21st. Happy for you. Oh, my God. So, Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Cordero Patterson. Thoughts on Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago's fortunate they have Trey Burton. Trey Burton's a tight end who's going to catch the ball and make some plays. I think Allen Robinson's seen his time come and go. I've yet to see something more. Anthony Miller is the guy with the most upside on this roster, in my opinion, but he's no better than a wide receiver 4, maybe a flex guy for you. Taylor Gabriel's been around. Riley Ridley, the new guy that they just brought in. We've heard the same Ridley before, haven't we? Comes from the same stock, so there should be some interest there. Cordero Patterson, he may be the return guy at best, maybe get you some cheap return yards, maybe be that wide receiver 5 on your team, maybe a bench player. Not a lot to get excited about here. Mitch Trubisky seems to be continuing his growth and seems to be driving this team and seems to be the guy that can be the driving force to making first downs and winning games in Chicago. I like what they did running out and getting Mike Davis, but, I look, here's the deal. Mitch Trubisky has got to develop a little further. He's got to take the next step. When he takes the next step, it's either going to be because of these wide receivers or in spite of these wide receivers. He's going to make or break this team. So watch Mitch Trubisky's play in the preseason. That'll dictate where you draft some of these guys, and that'll adjust where some of these guys land on my final rankings. But right now, the only claim to fame I have here is an Anthony Miller, not even an Allen Robinson on my rankings, high enough to warrant a spot.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing because I agree with you wholeheartedly. I covered Anthony Miller when he was at Memphis, and that's the only guy that I look to. So I think it's funny how you ended with that because that's the only player that I see any merit right now is Anthony Miller. I don't see it with Robinson. I don't see it with Gabriel, and I don't see enough action for Cordero Patterson. So it's really Anthony Miller right now, but it's kind of just bunches. It's just a bunch of guys bunched up. It's almost like, when you make that dessert, you just kind of throw it all together, you mix it up, and you make something that you hope is going to taste good, but it's all just together. It's just locked. And that's what it looks like right now in Chicago is the defense has gotten better. You're hoping the running game can improve. But the wide receivers, again, they spent a lot of money, and I said it. Why did Jacksonville not spend all this money on Allen Robinson? Because after tearing his ACL, that entire season, that was the season they almost made it to the Super Bowl. They proved that they didn't need him. And I don't necessarily know what Allen Robinson is going to do if he can't separate himself this season, because that's a very dicey area to be a guy that's drafted that high, respected that much, and yet still not somebody who has really separated himself. Taylor Gabriel hasn't. He was the third option in Atlanta. And so I think it's Anthony Miller's show to take, but because it's so wide open in Chicago and it doesn't look pretty, I'm not telling you to take any of these guys in the draft. I think that somebody might take one of them, but Anthony Miller's probably going to be left in free agency, and that's your best bet. Minnesota's a different story. Adam Thielen, arguably one of the best, if not the best in some people's minds last year. His statistics were wonderful. Stephon Diggs, he completely outshadowed and took over the number one job from him. Those are the two guys that I look to in Minnesota. Mike, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I really like Adam Thielen and Diggs. It's a good problem to have in Minnesota. When you have a couple guys that could be the number one on a lot of other teams, and you have two of them, and are almost interchangeable in some respects, well, that's a great thing. That's a great problem to have. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen, a wide receiver 1. Stephon Diggs, a wide receiver 2 for me. I don't think Laquan Treadwell is going to damage anybody's roster by not being on it, or Stacey Coley. The guy you need to look out for, Jordan Taylor. He looks like he's getting the reps with the number 3 as a slot guy, as the number 3 receiver. This is a guy who could be that hidden gem, who could be that late round wonder, especially if one of these guys in Diggs or Thielen goes down. Look out for Jordan Taylor. But Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are the 1-2 punch there, the 1 and the 1A, with Thielen edging out Diggs as the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we definitely, we're looking at this situation that, Thielen and Diggs are still rather close, yet I would give the edge to Adam Thielen because of what he's done most recently and how he has, really come into his own with this team and done a phenomenal job with Minnesota. I don't think that there was, the mentality that he was going to be the guy in Minnesota, but I think he's definitely shown himself to be that, and I think it's wonderful. So, I think Thielen is the guy. I mean, Thielen's the guy I go to first. Stephon Diggs, not a bad player to pick up. 9 touchdowns last year, over 1,000 yards. He had 102 receptions and 1,021 yards, so 10 yards per catch on average for Stephon Diggs. And just to let you know, Adam Thielen on his side of things, he had 113 catches, 1,373 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So they both look pretty. They both look awesome. And I bet you there's teams in the NFL that wish they had either one of them to lead their team. I would say Philadelphia. I would say the Giants. I would say, I would say the Skins. A lot of these teams that we talked about that would be in desperate need of some help to get out there. San Francisco, Seattle. So, the list goes on and on. Thielen is good. Diggs is good. Don't let both of them pass you by. If one of them goes, get the other one right after it because somebody is going to do it. As soon as you pick one, the other guy is right behind him. Detroit is oh, sorry, go ahead.
Did you say feeling good? Like you're feeling good? Feeling good? Is that the new thing now? Feeling good? I'm feeling good about this?
I am feeling so good about what we do here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I have all the feels right now. All the feels. Oh, my God. So, but the last piece here is Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones Jr. Danny Amendola has found his way back to Matt Patricia. And Tommy Lee Lewis is there. And then there's just lists on and guys and all that good stuff. And they got a lot of running backs. So they got a lot of receivers. I still think that Golladay and Jones were better with Golden Tate. It's just my opinion. I don't know why they let him go, but they did. So Golladay is here. He's a young guy. He's from Northern Illinois. He was third round, 96 overall in 2017. He got hurt in his first year, came back, did some good stuff in the next year. Marvin Jones was good a couple seasons ago, kind of let me down last year a little bit. What are your thoughts on Detroit?
Well, a lot of people think Marvin Jones is the number one guy. Don't be confused by that. Kenny Golladay is the number one guy, and if he's not really officially that way on the depth chart or whatever, it don't mean nothing. We're looking for fantasy value, and Kenny Golladay is the number one fantasy value guy. He comes in at number 17 on my ranking. Marvin Jones comes in at number 30. So that tells me that, well, Dan, you're absolutely right. They shouldn't have let Golden Tate go away, but they had to. He was going to be facing a large contract coming up, and you saw Philadelphia was able to pay him that large contract. And, I don't think that, it's anything again. It's business, and that's the way things go sometimes. Kenny Golladay is going to put up some wide receiver type numbers at times, but his number 17, there's 16 guys in front of him who do better. So that means he's in the middle of the pack there as the number one on his team. To you, that means he's probably a wide receiver too. I don't think he's going to get drafted in some leagues before Marvin Jones, though. There's a lot of disinformation, a lot of bad information out there, and you got to understand and decipher that, know where you can trust and get your information. If you're getting your information from a magazine that you bought at Borders or Books A Million or whatever these places are called, if they're still even around, if you're even online and you're getting some outdated material from July when you have a September draft, we're talking about the NFL in June and July here, but you know what? We're going to continue to talk about it in September and August when your drafts are there. Yeah. So don't be confused. Golladay is the guy you want. If you're choosing between Golladay and Marvin Jones, take Golladay.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. I think Marvin Jones, he was trying to be – he was looking like he could be a number one. He had number one presence at time, but I think he's getting passed by Kenny Golladay. I think Golden Tate was that as well. So I like Golladay first and Marvin Jones Jr. second. I'm a little bit leery of Marvin Jones Jr. because he let me down last year. So I always kind of look to that and what have you done for me lately in the sense of where he's at. But Golladay, I would like to think, is going to be a guy that's going to put up some big numbers. I think he's going to be on the highlight reel. I think we're going to see some top tens. So I like Golladay. I like what he does. I feel good about him. And, he's somebody that has risen up my charts in the last couple of years. So with that being said, for Mike Sofka and myself, Dan Tortora, Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, myself, Dan Tortora of WakeUpCallDT.com, UNITY, you're a part of me. We're from the Charney's Menswear and Tuxedo Studios. And I want to thank Mike, Central Florida and Central New York, together on one show. Why? Because this is my first home, and that is my second home. And I could not be more proud to connect with it every single week with one of the best in the biz and one of the best that I could talk to. So, Mike, thank you for being a good friend. Thank you for all your work with fantasy football. Thank you for Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. And thank you for spending time, because one of the things we can never get back in life is our time, and you give a lot of it to this show, and I appreciate it.
Not a problem, Dan. I always look forward to it. And by the way, when you go to the website, you sign up for any premium service at Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, Use discount code Orlando40. You get 40% off. 40% off all premium products. But, of course, we have those $5 cheat sheets. And, of course, we have your waiver wire handled for you for less than $1 a week. Go check it out at HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com.
Do it right now. Make sure that you put yourself out there. Discount Orlando40, HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com. Mike, we will talk with you soon. We have the tight ends coming up next, who are some teams' best wide receivers, as we said. I look forward to talking with you.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right, take care. That coming from Mike Sofka one more time as we complete the video here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora here on Facebook.com/live now DT. So with that being